Welcome to Social LO Ministries, where we are committed to glorifying God while exposing the devil. I absolutely love hearing stories about how the Lord brought two people together. Oftentimes, when you ask a couple how they were introduced, how they formed a relationship, you will see the Lord's hands in it. And in some cases, you won't. Two notable testimonies I've heard about relationships, and these are on the positive side. If you've heard of Pureflix Entertainment, they produced movies such as God's Not Dead. You may have heard of David A.R. White, and he's a co-founder of Pureflix Entertainment. I heard him testify, and it's something I can relate to very well, where he said that he went to a church and he was very smitten by a young lady. But the Lord would not allow him to speak to that young lady for a year. But it ended well for him because they're now married, have some children. That is over. And when I say that is over, at least the struggle. Waiting for a year just for the opportunity to speak with someone, that is hell. And I can tell you, the devil is against God-ordained relationships. And whichever way he can come between them, he's going to try. If he's going to, in some cases, he's going to try to keep people apart. In other cases, he's going to try to create a wedge in between that relationship. Another example is actress Megan Good. I heard her testify saying she knew of her husband, or the person who would become her husband, Devon Franklin. And I heard her say that the Lord pointed him out and said that that's going to be your husband. And 9 months later, and she kept it to herself, but 9 months later, they start communicating, then start dating, now they're married. Unfortunately, there are a lot of good stories out there about how the Lord brought people together. But the devil is an imitator, and he is against relationships, God-ordained relationships. When the Lord brings people together, it is to create addition and multiplication. And we see this. He brought Adam and Eve together. They conceived a child. It added things. In fact, I'll share something from scriptures about the power of being in the right relationship. It's from Deuteronomy 32:30, which states, "How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight?" So it's about one chasing 1,000 and two putting 10,000 to flight. So there's power in unity. And when the Lord brings people together, it's in a sense two things. Love, because their love for each other is going to be indicative of his love for them. So it's a reflection of his love. And the other is for purpose, which is one of the key things why the devil attacks relationships. If he can prevent two people from coming together, that will block their purpose. So in a sense, one person may be chasing 1,000 and they feel great, but it's not as good as if that person was united with someone else so they could chase 10,000. So it is in the kingdom of darkness interest to keep a person single. Now, I know the Apostle Paul, what we would call a powerful man of God, someone who wrote majority of the New Testament. He was single. He had a grace for being single. I don't know of too many single Christians who have that grace. A lot of single Christians I know of have the desire to be in a God-ordained relationship. And in some cases, they do things and it ends up being ungodly. But in a sense, it's all in pursuit of that godly relationship. And a lot of those Christians are going to church and they're being told about pursuing the Lord and let him worry about the stuff. But there's that desire in their hearts to be in a relationship. In some cases, they may get told that it's not of God and they should just focus on the Lord. But then those same Christians, when they read in Genesis where the Lord said it was not good for the man to be alone, they may start wondering, okay, Lord, how long am I going to be alone? When are you going to start saying it's not good for me to be alone and bring that person to my life? And a part of the frustration may be you have that desire to be with the person and only the person that the Lord has ordained for you. But the devil keeps on trying to make your life miserable, trying to bring people into your life that may make it seem as if this is the one. It may start off where you think you have a godly peace, and then it starts unraveling, which proves itself false. And the devil is an imitator. And if he can get you with someone who is not the person for you, it will limit your your fulfillment of your godly purpose on this earth. And in Ephesians 6:12 it states, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." I mentioned about David A.R. White and Megan Good. Those are good things. Especially in Megan Good's case, where she said the Lord pointed out Devon Franklin as being her husband. And it ended up coming to pass. Many Christians have felt as if they got a divine revelation, whether through a voice or in a dream, that someone's going to be their spouse. And in some cases, that person is married, and that Christian becomes fixated on that person as being his or her God-ordained spouse. But that's not going to be the case. And in some cases, the person may, for example, keep on having dreams about the same person and thinking, yeah, this is the one, this is the one. Again, the devil is an imitator. And in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, it states, "Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders." When the Lord makes a promise, he will typically confirm it in some way. Either the thing is going to come to pass very quickly, where confirmation really isn't needed because it's coming to pass so quickly, or he will send confirmation to let you know that yes, it is of his will. So for example, he may give you a dream saying, so-and-so is going to be your husband or your wife. And you may have 5 people come to you the next day. Oh yeah, I had a dream that so-and-so, you and so-and-so got married. And they'll confirm it. But the devil, he will also do the same thing. I mentioned about the case of David A.R. White, where he went to a church and he saw the woman that he would later marry, but the Lord prevented him from speaking with her for a year. In some cases, the devil may get you to focus on a person, thinking that person is going to be the one for you, block you from speaking with a person, or keep on giving you signs that the person is the one. And in a sense, he may have you looking to your left, but the person you're supposed to be with is to your right, but he brings a person to your life as a distraction. So you truly have to be careful. I know all this here, it comes down to your relationship with the Lord. And it's not to say that you won't get deceived. When you look in Genesis 29 with Jacob and Rachel, there's so many questions regarding this story. Because Jacob made a pact, a deal with Laban to marry his younger daughter Rachel. And at the end of the 7-year period, when he was eligible to marry Rachel, he ended up marrying Leah instead. There are times, and this is legitimately now, there are times when the Lord will have someone for you. And if you're passive about it, the devil will, in a sense, send someone like a Leah to snatch that person away from you. And in some cases, you may find yourself, you may know that the person was ordained from the Lord for you. The same way for 7 years, I'm sure Rachel knew she was going to marry Jacob. But he ended up marrying Leah instead. And even though I kind of chuckle, it is kind of sad because I'm like, what was Rachel doing? Why she didn't stand up and basically I don't know, in those days things were a little bit different. But I see Christians today where you get in the passive mode thinking that because the Lord has something for you, that there won't be challenges or that you won't have to stand up and fight. An example is in Exodus 14. The Israelites were trapped by the Red Sea. The Egyptian army was barreling down towards them. The people were crying out to Moses, and Moses was crying out to the Lord. And when I say crying out to the Lord, Moses was actually saying, be still and watch the Lord fight for you. And then the Lord was like, why are you crying out to me? And he told him to use his staff to part the Red Sea. That is because the Lord had empowered Moses to make things happen. There are times where Christians, the person that the Lord has ordained for you, is in a sense right in front of you. But you get into this passive mode thinking that you don't have to do anything and the Lord's going to do everything when he is waiting for you to make a move. And the devil loves it when you just sit back and do nothing, because that's when he does something. And he'll throw a Leah into the mix. But there's all kind of deception going on with Jacob, where he ended up marrying the wrong person. In some cases, God-ordained relationships are ruined, or just say delayed, because the person that the Lord has ordained for you, whether or not he revealed that person to you, that person ended up in a demonically arranged union, whether it was a marriage or a lesser type of relationship. So at the moment the Lord, or you think the Lord, reveals someone as being your spouse, pray earnestly. Pray to the Lord for confirmation, for him to give you that godly peace, because Jesus is not the author of confusion. He's the author of peace. And that's one of those signs where a relationship is ordained by the Lord. Having or feeling a mutual spiritual connection with another person. Because that's one of those things that get people in trouble. They see a person, that person may, for example, fit all of their requirements for a godly spouse, but that is not the one the Lord has ordained for him or her. In the book of Jeremiah, the Lord said that the heart is deceitful. Many people have deceived themselves by, in a sense, focusing on someone because that person is, in a sense, everything that they're looking for. But that person is not the one the Lord has for him or her. But because they're so focused, it's like they can't even hear the Lord anymore, regarding for the Lord is saying, no, that's not the one. Either I've called you to be single, or I have someone else in mind for you. Like I said before, there are people who think they have a future spouse that has been ordained by the Lord, but that person is in a relationship. It may be even in a marriage, happily married, but the other person is waiting around, wasting his or her life. And it's not that I'm advocating dating. To me, if the Lord can bring Ruth and Boaz together, and that was complicated because it required Naomi leaving Bethlehem, going to Moab. Moab was married, or Ruth was married to one of Naomi's sons, Mahlon. They were probably married for about 10 years. He died. Ruth's other son died, or Naomi's other son died. Her husband died. So she decided to move back to Bethlehem. She had her 2 daughters-in-law with her. She tried to send them back to Moab. Orpah, her other daughter-in-law, the lesser-known one, she went back, but Ruth stuck with her, and that's how she ended up meeting Boaz. If the Lord can bring Ruth and Boaz together, surely he can bring anyone together. So if you're waiting, ensure that you're truly waiting on the Lord. Also, as a part of praying, pray that your heart is not deceiving you. Pray that any signs that you're seeing is from God and not from the devil, because it can be costly. It can cost you delays as far as being with the person that the Lord has ordained for you. Because if you end up in an ungodly union, what I call a demonically arranged union, in a sense, the Lord has to clean you up. And the longer you're in that demonically arranged union, it's probably more the Lord's going to have to do in order to get you ready for the person that he has ordained for you. So even if the devil can't prevent you from getting into a God-ordained relationship, if he can get you stuck with one of his sons or daughters, it will create problems that the Lord has to rid you of. I won't go into deep in details, but the Lord will truly have to clean you up. I mentioned about David A.R. White and the young lady he was interested in. He said at the time that he's what we would call a baby Christian. So her relationship with the Lord was much closer than his. So one of the things that the Lord had to do was strengthen David's relationship with him before putting him with his daughter. A year is a long wait, especially when you know that, or you did have a desire to get to know someone. Even if you don't have a definitive word from the Lord that that is a person for you, but if you have an interest in getting to know someone, a year is a long time to wait simply to have a conversation with a person. During that time, the devil, he will mess with you. And when I say mess with you, he may make you feel as if the Lord is withholding that person from you because you are not good enough for him or her. And rather than feeling like a son or a daughter of the Lord, quite frankly, you may feel like a slave. Because if the devil can make you feel as if you're not good enough for the Lord's best, then that may cause friction between you and the Lord. The devil may come at you and tell you that the reason why the Lord's not letting you, I'll just say, have that person is because he can't trust you with him or her. Again, that may raise doubt as far as, but he can trust me with so-and-so, he can trust me with this and that, so why couldn't he trust me with his daughter? And you may never know why, for example, if the Lord illuminates someone to you, why it may take 9, 12 months, or even longer for him to bring the two of you together. I can only hope that it'll be worth the wait. Relationships, God-ordained relationships, is a very powerful thing. For some people, their stories seem so easy. It's like no friction. They met so-and-so for the first time, they started speaking, and they were inseparable from that day. For others, you kind of feel as if there's this invisible shield. In some cases, you may feel as if God and the devil are working to keep you away from that person, the one that the Lord has ordained for you. Please ensure that your relationship with the Lord is what it's supposed to be. It is a big deal as far as who you spend the rest of your life with. A very big deal. It is for God's glory. There are times I wish I could help people navigate, I'll just say, the dating scene. To say, no, that person's not the one for you. And especially if a person is focused on someone. I was going down a road, but I have to stop. Because another dangerous thing about what the devil does, if he can get you focused on someone, making you think that person is the one the Lord has ordained for you, there are times when the Lord will send a messenger to let you know, no, that is not the one. But you are so locked in that you refuse to believe. Also, on the other end, there are times when the Lord may illuminate someone to you, and it takes a long time for him to bring the two of you together. And during that time, the devil maximizes every opportunity to make you question, kind of the same way he did in Genesis 3 with Eve. Did God really say that's a person for you? And if you're not careful, you can potentially go off with someone else, while a God-ordained spouse is there in a sense waiting for you. If you are waiting, I pray that in the name of Jesus, that he will give you the clarity to let you know if the person you are waiting on is in fact the person that he has for you. So that if that person is not, that you can fix your focus elsewhere, especially on him. The Apostle Paul mentioned that one of the benefits of being single is being able to focus on the Lord. I know for many of you, that is very difficult because in your heart, and when you read scriptures talking about the Lord fulfilling the desires of your heart, the God-ordained desires of your heart, in your heart, you desire to have a person in your life. And it is hard to focus on the Lord when there's that, I'll just say emptiness. And yes, the Lord can fill all the empty spaces in your life. When you read in the book of Genesis, where even though Adam had a close relationship with the Lord, it was the Lord who said, "It is not good for the man to be alone." So even though you have that incredible relationship with the Lord, you desire to have that earthly partner. But I pray the Lord will give you clarity, where if a person you're focused on is not the one for you, that he and you will free yourself from that person. And if there is someone, that he could potentially illuminate that person to you, or at least give you a sense of peace, so that you won't be focused on trying to get that person into your life, but you'll be focused on him. Because just because the Lord makes a promise doesn't mean he intends to fulfill it overnight. And we see this in Genesis, where he promised Abraham and Sarah a child. But that was a promise that took 25 years to fulfill. And even after the Lord appeared to them and said that basically in 1 year he was going to bless them with a child, they still had obstacles. Because in Genesis 20, you will notice that Sarah ended up in King Abimelech's harem. That was during about a 3-month window when she should have been getting pregnant with a child. So that was an obstacle. In a sense, the devil still trying to stop things. When the Lord speaks, he acts. Just be careful that your actions do not create obstacles that may cause potential delays. When I say delays, the Israelites were supposed to go into the promised land 40 years prior. It came down to their lack of faith. They were more focused on the giants as opposed to the Lord, and the Lord delayed their entry into the promised land by 40 years. Quite frankly, I don't want to see anyone out there get delayed into that promised relationship with a godly person from the Lord because of your actions. It is best to be still and know that he is God. And like I said, if he can execute a complex maneuver of getting Ruth all the way from Moab to be with Boaz, he can get you with a person that you need to be with. That brings up another thing. I mentioned about how Christians get passive sometimes. When you read the story of Ruth and Boaz, when they met, Boaz thought highly of Ruth. He knew she was a virtuous woman. He gave her extra wheat and barley, treated her more special than the other women in the field. But they never pursued a relationship until Naomi basically told Ruth to clean up herself and go to Boaz that night. And I've said this before in other teachings, but sometimes Christian women think that it's the man who always has to make a move. Now, there are limits, but especially Christian women, if you're interested in a man, and especially if the Lord has told you that's going to be your husband, there are things that you may have to do at times to let that man know that you're interested. Because in some cases, he may be waiting on a sign from you before proceeding. But thank God for Naomi, because she was the one who was the catalyst to get Ruth and Boaz together. And in Ruth chapter 3, you will notice that after Naomi visited Boaz, that he did not hesitate to ensure that the way was clear to marry her. But someone had to make a move. So in a lot of cases, it won't be the Lord saying, what's your name is? Go to so-and-so. It may come through a person, but ensure that you listen to the right people. The devil is a counterfeit, so as much as the Lord may send people to tell you to do things, the devil may do things or send people to tell you to do the opposite, to get you outside of God's will. So just be very careful about the voices that you're listening to. I could keep on rambling, but I know so many of you are in a painful position because you have the desire in your heart to be with a godly spouse. And there have been some issues. But I'll close by saying this. A lot of times we say Ruth and Boaz in a sense as being the gold standard when it comes to relationships. If you desire to be with a quote unquote Boaz, ensure that you are a Ruth. And if you are a Ruth and you desire to be with a quote unquote, or if you are a woman and you desire to be with a quote unquote Boaz, ensure that you are a Ruth. Because a lot of times, and it's not to say that someone's better than you, but if your relationship with the Lord isn't where it's supposed to be, if you have some serious issues that you need to work out first, you need to work those issues first, work them out first, before trying to get into a relationship with someone. If you're, in a sense, broken, going into a relationship can make you heal. But you could also be a liability by causing damage in that relationship. Which one of those things, if the devil can get you in like wrong relationships, that will cause problems with the Lord bringing you into a right relationship. Because you won't be ready. You'll be more of a liability than an asset. I'm going to stop rambling. Please pray to the Lord. If you have your eyes, your heart set on someone, to ensure that that is a person that He wants you to be with. And truly be prepared and be open to receive an answer from the Lord. And if it means being like Gideon in Judges 6 and 7, when it comes to testing the spirits, ensure that you have a clear answer. And I'm going to speak from experience. I've been down that road where I was getting confirmation about someone, but those signs proved to be from the devil. So I kind of have an understanding of what Jacob may have gone through, thinking he was going to be with Rachel and ending up with Leah. God bless you.